In Acts 10, Cornelius, the centurion, before he hears the gospel about Jesus, now he seems never to even have heard about Jesus, from Peter, Luke in Acts tells us that God was already accepting his prayers and his alms. And none other than John Calvin, who's not a religious liberal, and Jonathan Edwards, who is not a religious liberal, said that at that point, before Cornelius heard the gospel from Jesus' lips, he was regenerate, that is, born again, but hadn't been converted yet. Something akin to John the Baptist, whom Luke says received the Spirit while he was still a fetus in the womb, but hadn't been converted yet to Jewish faith in the true God. And Paul in Acts 14:17 says, God is at work in all nations. He did not leave himself without witness. And Peter in Acts 10, after seeing God pouring out the Holy Spirit upon all these pagans, he says, in every nation, anyone who fears God and does right is acceptable to God. Now, in the early church, they were dealing with a religious pluralism greater than ours, far greater than the religious pluralism you deal with in Minneapolis or even New York City. In 3rd century Alexandria, it was unbelievably religiously plural. So Justin Martyr and Irenaeus and Clement of Alexandria and Origen were profound thinkers who dealt with this question of religious pluralism. And they all were agreed that Acts 4:12, there's no other name under heaven by which a man may be saved, or a woman, and John 14:6, no one comes to the Father but by me, Jesus said, are both true. And so all these early church thinkers said that only Christians are saved. But what does that word Christian mean? They said the Spirit works on those outside the church. And in some way, Irenaeus said maybe in the millennium, in some way that God only knows, in some time that God only knows, every human being who already is following the leading of the Holy Spirit in his or her own religion will at some point be confronted with Jesus and the gospel. And if that person is really following the Spirit through that religion, that person will realize this is the true God now. And it was only through the death and resurrection of God's Son that I have been following the Spirit at all. And they will bow their knee and confess with their lips that Jesus is Lord and God raised him from the dead. So why should we evangelize if that's true? Well, we should evangelize because Jesus tells us to. Matthew 28, the Great Commission, make disciples of all the nations, first. Second, we want to bring people into the fullness of life in God, which includes things like assurance to salvation, which most pagans don't have, the fullness of life in the Spirit. And it's very interesting. Paul came to Philippi, and he runs into Lydia, who already was a worshiper of God. And Paul's decision was, well, that's not enough. She must find out who God truly is and come into fellowship with his Son, Jesus, even though she was already a worshiper of God. And the final reason why we still need to evangelize is because the gospel itself is power. It's power to roll back the darkness in this world. And if you're not convinced there's darkness in this world, well, turn on CNN. So in conclusion, 4 points. I'm very sure I'm closing here. We should dialogue with people of other religions, but with respect for the truth that is in their religions and respect toward their religious founders. Second, we can tell them that we agree with them in part, mostly on the horizontal level, their moral teachings. Third, if we have integrity, if we have spiritual and religious integrity and philosophical integrity as Christians, we must also acknowledge the real differences that exist among the religions. On the vertical plane, they are many and they're profound. But if we don't engage other, our friends of other religions on where we're different, not only on how we're like, we aren't treating them with respect. I learned that from dialoguing with people of other religions around the world. I've been in serious dialogues with Mormons, serious dialogues with Muslims, serious dialogues. Now I'm involved in with Jews. And I have found they don't respect a person who says, oh yeah, we're all basically believing the same thing, and just ignore the differences. And finally, fourth, there's no need to fear engaging other religionists as Christians. In fact, I would encourage you to invite them to try to persuade you of the truth of their religion. And show them that you really want to listen, you really want to understand, but also be open to the Holy Spirit. Don't just barge in like a bull in a china shop, but when the Holy Spirit gives you an opening, share with them the truth of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
I would say you lived up to the review, wouldn't you? Informed, balanced, and very accessible. We're going to let him just rest his vocal cords for 1 second, take a drink. I've got a couple of announcements. First of all, a reminder, as you see in your program tonight, of the next event. We're going to let you get through Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and we will gather again here in early February, Friday, February 5th, with a gentleman named Richard Camp, who is a former chaplain of West Point. And he's going to talk about faith and leadership as seen through the lens of what West Point taught him during his time there. That should be fascinating. Also, as I always do, I lift up these green sheets. I mentioned already that our guest tonight is here because of a suggestion, at least in terms of topic. So I invite your feedback, your suggestions, and just as importantly, I invite your email. If you do not currently get our email updates, it's a very easy, efficient, cost-effective way to communicate with you and let you know about upcoming events. So if you give us your email and leave it on one of the tables out here, we will inform you of events, and I promise we won't fill your inbox too much. And then finally, as I say, at most of these events, these are not supported through the budgets of either St. Philip or Mount Olivet. They are supported entirely through the gifts and contributions of individuals and corporations. They are listed on your program, and I just want to recognize at least some of the major contributors: Thrivent, the St. Philip, the Deacon Foundation, TCF Bank, Leaders Manufacturing, Luther Seminary, Fuzzy Duck, and the Bookcase, as well as the churches, which are mostly the individuals listed here. You are here this evening, and we are able to invite speakers of Dr. McDermott's caliber because of the generosity of these people and organizations, many of whom are here tonight, and I think they deserve our thanks. So can we do that? We're going to take maybe 10, 15 minutes for some Q&A. Pastor Hoffman has the microphone back there, so if there are questions,
show your hand.
Raise your hand.
First of all, I hope you notice, as a graduate of the University of Iowa, the singular vision he had, with all that noise going on, he could just plow right on through. Isn't it good to have an adopted Hawkeye in our midst? I went to the University of Iowa also, that's why I'm saying that. So, anyway.
3 cheers for the Hawkeyes.
I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I have studied Islamism and the early church traditions in the first 300 years. The question I have is this: which one of your books best describes, the one that I would like to get, that shows what you have presented to us tonight? Because I think it was absolutely magnificent with respect to, particularly your thought that you echoed in your last few statements, that with respect to Christians, it's the fullness of faith that has been revealed to us that tends to differentiate us in a way from the other religions. You know. Well, which book is the best one to buy for all of them?
Well, I'd say the quick and dirty one is the Baker Pocket Guide, particularly the chapter on Christianity. That's the little book on sale out there. And the more extensive argument that goes much, much deeper is God's Rivals. And that's also out there.
So buy both books.
Yeah.